What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Built on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Max Hansen, the CEO of Y Scouts. This show is built for entrepreneurs, leaders, and anyone looking to level up and get stronger mentally, physically, and emotionally. We dive into leadership, personal growth, both physically and mentally, and of course, hiring. Because to hire great leaders, you have to become a great leader. Our goal is to help you grow into a better leader, a better parent, and a better human so you can crush it in business and in life. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Built On Podcast. I'm your host, Max Hansen, the CEO of Y Scouts, where we find purpose aligned and performance proven leaders. Speaking of, today our guest is Chris Johnson, founder and CEO of LaneTerralever and the managing partner at TomorrowToday, a pioneering AI consultancy that helps companies unlock growth and efficiency through cutting edge technology. With over 25 years of experience in digital strategy and a track record of leading transformative change, Chris is recognized thought leader for the IA space, known for guiding businesses to harness the true potential of AI innovation. I've also been lucky enough to call Chris a friend for over 25 years. Chris Johnson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Max. You effectively made me sound really old. I appreciate.
And me too. We both sound old, which we kind of are. Like, so I will, I wasn't going to jump in like this, but I will. So let's, uh, first of all, let's talk about Lane Terralever. Let's talk about,
Yeah,
what that is, because I think if somebody's jumping in, they're kind of like, why do I want to listen to more of this guy? What does he have achieved? So I kind of want to start at a high level of like what Lane
yeah,
does, and then eventually we'll get into the AI stuff.
sure. Well, I'm going to make it easy on you, and we just call it LT now.
Okay.
So, yeah, because that's a mouthful. It only took us 10 years to figure that out. Yeah, it has its roots in 2002. I started a pure play digital agency. Um, Coming out of the internet boom and bust, the bubble, where I was doing a lot of like very like large enterprise e-commerce sites. And so I started a new company that was really targeted at delivering enterprise grade, beautiful, usable websites to companies, but it's focused on dealing and working with the CMO or a SVP of sales and marketing, which I know sounds funny now, but in the late '90s, when we were building these huge commerce sites, 90% of the work was technical. It was integrating with legacy systems. It was about uptime, security, and then 10% was really talking to the CMO about who the customer was and what marketing really needed out of it. So started that, grew that throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s, and had a lot of success. Really focused on social media, enterprise websites, apps, and digital performance marketing. And then in 2013, I started to see that there was starting to lose a distinction between what a digital agency was and what a traditional agency was. So I merged my company with a traditional agency of the same size that really didn't do a whole lot of digital. But what they brought was conceptual creative. They brought PR, traditional media buying, copywriting, all these things that we didn't. And then I spent about 3 years going through the brain damage of figuring out how you integrate old school and new school, revamping processes so that we could actually be truly integrated. And really, since then, we've been running LT um, uh, as a fully integrated, I would say digital first at this point, which I think most agencies are in the world these days, where you lead with digital. Probably 70 to 75% of the work that we do is digitally focused, but we still do TV commercials and buy billboards and those things for our clients. Um, and that's where we're at today. So we're based out of Phoenix, but our customers are around the country. We do a lot of work in the casinos and entertainment space, healthcare space, and a lot in nonprofit. So
Got it. What have been some of your favorite customers? I mean, I know, I just don't know if you're at liberty to like share them all, but like, I think
yeah,
let's talk about some of them that I guess people would know, or your favorite kind of clients along the way here.
yeah, probably along the way, we did a ton of work for Red Bull for about 7 8 years, both in North America, but also internationally. So we had people in Salzburg, Austria, working with them. So it was a lot of fun, high profile stuff like Lindsey Vohn's website or working on the Stratos project where Felix Baumgartner, I remember he went up in a weather balloon and jumped out from the stratosphere. Working on those kind of projects was always fun. Um, we were actually Facebook's first agency partner. In the early days of Facebook, when they first launched their platform, we were under what I think was a 30-page NDA of looking at how you could integrate with their platform and use social data to create interesting experiences. That's what Cambridge Analytica did in very bad ways to influence elections, but it's the same technology. But out of that, we had a lot of cool clients we got to work with. It was Apple, BMW, Nike, um, well, J.C. Penney's not cool, but they're a big company. And those were great. Kind of more modern, as we started to more focus on our integrated offering. Um, we do a lot of great work in the casino space, a lot of innovative work. But the clients I love most these days are some of our nonprofits or state agencies. So we work with the Department of Child Safety in Arizona, and the work that we do literally puts kids into foster homes and gets them adopted. And we've had amazing results across our long relationship with them. But it's really rewarding to do great work, have it be creative and innovative, but also really have impact on your community.
Amazing, amazing. So, not to get not to back up too much, but who are you? Like if you were, if you were a cake and there are ingredients to make it up, like what like who are you that, is in front of me today? Just kind of going back. Because this is gonna be
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I've known you for so long. I've never really even asked this question about like what you were like as a kid or like how you were driven. Then I've got some follow-up questions, but I kind of want to understand who you were. I think most people are listening, what we're trying to achieve is, somebody that is trying to figure out how to become more successful, kind of what mindset they have, and try to align like where you were. And we'll kind of talk about how you've gotten to where you are today. But who are you? And like talk about like who you were growing up.
I mean, growing up, I think if you were to ask anybody in my high school what I was going to do when I grew up, it was probably be a fine art photographer. I loved photography and I just loved doing it. And I think I was actually pretty good at it for being in high school. But I started looking at what a photographer might make. I mean, obviously, if you become really famous, you can make a ton of money, make a living doing it. But um, I decided instead to go to school for engineering. So I got a degree in industrial engineering. So I'm an industrial engineer that runs an advertising agency, which is weird. And Beyond that, I'm a dad. I have a 22-year-old and 24-year-old, both my kids, and super proud of, and that's been a big part of and the focus for me over the last, over 20 years, and I put a lot of effort into that. Husband to my wife, Kim, who's I married an accountant, which was the greatest thing ever because she thinks a lot differently than I do. And I think our kids benefited from that, but also the businesses that I started have benefited from that. Like I have somebody like I'm the crazy guy who likes to go out there and take risks, and she's the person that makes sure that we actually have money in the bank and when I'm not giving away the farm and collects money and all of those things all along the way. So I still work with her in LT, and she's helping out a bit on Tomorrow Today as well as we start to scale that. Um, I think it's kind of like at my core, what really drives me is um, I love learning new stuff, new shit. I love doing it in the 90s with e-commerce and being one of the first people that knew how to do that work. I love doing it when social media came out and figuring out how that applies to business. And I've been really reinvigorated over the last year and a half with AI, specifically around generative AI, about not that just the tech's cool, but actually digging into it and looking at how businesses can be leveraging it in ways they don't know today. And I love talking to executive teams who have if you ask them if they know of AI, they say yes. You ask them what it really is, you'll get a lot of different answers. But very few executive teams have a practical understanding of what AI, but more importantly, like what it means to their business. And I love going in and understanding a business and then looking at how AI will be transforming that business over the next couple of years.
Love it. Love it. What drove you to start your business like early on? When you started, by the way, his first
Yeah.
company called TerraLever, that's where the T comes from before he merged
Yep.
with Lane. But talk about that because that's kind of where we, kind of came into one another's life and
Yeah.
actually don't really remember, but maybe that some of the things are the same. But like what was driving you early on?
Yeah. That was So while I was still in college, I was a software developer, and I was like employee 15 inside of a company that mostly did like old school, what we really old school from where we sit now, but creating software that helped businesses or government agencies run that ran on computers. And then it was around 96 is right where internet technologies started to come into play. Like this is pre Google, right? Obviously pre all the social media stuff. And um, and I went to the owner of that company. And I was like, hey, look at what some of this tech can do. Like we could build sites and apps that run inside of a browser. He was like, well, if you can sell it, if you can get the sales guys to sell it, I'll let you do it. So I started working with the sales guys and we started selling websites and e-commerce sites. Well, that company grew from 15 people to 750 people between 96 and 2000. That was the effect of that technology boom that came with the internet. And because I was, this kid that had really started that, I had a lot of opportunities and a lot of responsibility along that way to the point of when we IPO'd in 2000, I think I was in charge of 350 people in the organization. And and then internet bubble burst. We went from selling $6 million websites to couldn't sell a $10,000 website because all investment came out of it. Internet was a fad. It was never going to be what it was supposed to be, which I didn't believe. But when that company, as it started to unwind, I looked back at it and I was an entrepreneur, I guess, right? I was given a lot of leeway and freedom inside that company to innovate and do things. And the company benefited from a great. I grew a lot from that, and it's not like I wasn't compensated well for it. But when I came out of that experience and decided to leave that company, I thought about, was this something that I could actually do on my own? Because the guy that ran that company and started it, Jim Garvey, like he financed the thing on his credit cards, and he took all that risk, and he got a lot of reward out of it. And I looked at it as like I was sort of an entrepreneur. Like, do I really have it in me to go and create my own company and put it all on the line, to do my own thing and control my own destiny? And that's where TerraLever came from.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. And I remember, and by the way, this also just reminded me, I forgot that Kim also took care of my finances as well for job.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This came back to me. She was always amazing. And um, talk about, let's talk about some of the challenges. Like, we've known each other for a long time. So, some I know, and then some I'll probably learn of here. But talk about like in growing TerraLever. Like, what
Yeah.
was some of the biggest things that you ran into along the way? Like, because you knew it was gonna be hard and you knew you're
Yeah.
at this point, you're willing to take the risk, but what did the risks end up being that, you kind of made meaning of, both good and bad, but let's just start with the, kind of the challenges, the biggest challenges.
Yeah. I mean, obviously so many along the way as most have had in their career. The first challenge is when you start a company and it's just you're the person that has to do everything. And some of those things you're not comfortable with and probably not very good at. I was really good at consulting and doing software development and building things, but I wasn't great at networking and I wasn't great at sales and I wasn't good at marketing. Um, and I was probably at that point okay at managing, based on my experience, but I'd like to think I'm a lot better today. Um, and so it was that first stage was just being really uncomfortable for a couple of years doing things that you've always kind of shied away from because you don't think that you can do it. And the reality is that you can, but you just have to go out and do it and try it and fail and become better at it. Um, and then along the way, I mean, just running a small business, you've got all the typical challenges of cash flow and when do I hire overhead and how do I scale and learning how to hire and hiring the right way. I mean, that's your world, Max. But hiring slow and firing fast, and there's a ton of valuable lessons that I today benefit from. But they're all through screwing it up the first time, or sometimes three times before you learn your lesson. Um, I had a partner in TerraLever that came in a couple years after I started it, and was a big part of growing TerraLever together. Um, but I can't even tell you how long ago it was. It was well over 10 years ago. But he died, And so it was my kind of my partner and somebody I could rely on um, and talk to about things that I couldn't talk to about others in the business. And it was very sudden. And then all of a sudden it was just me. And in some ways, from a business perspective, I felt like I was kind of back in that position of now doing the things that I'm not comfortable with at the scale that we were, because I had to start taking on the things that my partner was so great at. But then also leading a company through that was an incredibly challenging time. And then we got dropped by our bank is another example at the last minute, and had to go out and find a new bank and secure a new line of credit after going through this. But just leading through that and dealing with not just the business challenges, but people's kind of emotions and grief and how they felt about it, and at the same time dealing with my own emotions and grief as you go through it. Um, I wouldn't wish on anybody. Um, and then I would say putting two companies together that have very different cultures and very different ways of doing things is really really hard to do it right, in my opinion. You see a lot where they just kind of mash two companies together when they're doing M&A, or they'll roll up 10 companies and say, here's what we're going to do. And there's just a lot of chaos and carnage along the way. And we just took a much more deliberate approach. But it was a hard 3 years of reimagining what a new company was going to be that had the best of companies that made two great companies that formed it, but then reimagining what that new company needed to be and what was going to provide value by bringing them together. Yeah, it took a long time, and there's countless learnings of going through that process. But um, certainly worth it, right? Of sitting where we sit today, and what metric we like to look at was, I think, a year into having putting those two companies together, we started kind of hearing some client complaints, and we said, well, we'll just do a survey and ask. So we did our first net promoter score survey, NPS. And if you're familiar with NPS, like, um, generally you want to be positive, right? That means more people love you than utterly hate you. Um, and we did our first NPS survey, and we came out at a -6, I think. But in that process, we got a ton of feedback as to what was working and what wasn't, and where we were failing on that integration. And then we did it 6 months later, and we were at 12. And then we did it 6 months later, and we were at 25. And I think for the last 7 years, we've been between 75 and 85 as a company, which is incredibly important in our business, is making sure that you're actually uh, keeping your clients happy, that you're meeting their needs. And every time we do one of those surveys, we still learn more, and we change. And every year we're a slightly different company based on that feedback.
Got it. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I kind of remember those days. I also remember we started our businesses at the exact same time. I think one of your clients was my business partner's company. I think that was a setup, right?
Yeah.
So we had
Yeah.
cubes.
We had cubes right next to each other. Yeah. That's how we met.
How long do we work in those cubes? At least months, right?
I was probably there 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we go to lunch. I was running a recruiting business, and next to the cube that he was running his, his business with a couple other folks. So that was interesting. The other thing, when you talked about Andy's tragic death, is we started. I remember the year, that year that happened. We started a poker league, which
Yep.
you have still going today. I finally, am not part of it, but for like 13 years, I was part of it. And I remember when that happened, that was crazy that, the poker league, all of a sudden, it's one of the reasons why I stuck in it for so long, because I didn't want to quit for Andy, but I kind of finally just decided, hey, I put enough
Yep.
time in. But I remember going to that funeral, and man, that was rough. You did, I can't imagine going through that. One day you're in running a business, and you're playing poker with, a good friend. And then the next day everybody's at his funeral in the poker league. So that was
Yeah.
an interesting time, and very, very tragic. So, what, like, what things have changed? You talked about a lot of them, but like, when you think about you as a leader, and I think this is great because I do remember you, and I know, who you are today. It's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on here today. But when you think about the leader you are today, you talked about some of the learning lessons, but like, is there, let's talk about hiring. Like, so when you think about hiring, like, what are the things that you think changed, your business or like made you much better on the hiring side? Was there one specific hire that you remember making that you think really kind of changed the game for you? Or it was
Yeah.
like a process that you like thought about? Like, let's talk about that because you're pretty intuitive on the hiring side.
Yeah, I mean, I've made a lot of amazing hires, some of which I still work with today. I made hires in that first company that work with me today in this new company, which is amazing and it's rewarding having those relationships for that amount of time. And then I've made a lot of really terrible hires and along the way. And um, I mean, I think a couple things that I look at is early on, a lot of the focus I had was like, can you do this job or not? Right? Do you have the skills to just do this? Because we need somebody that does this, and I need them 2 weeks ago. And we would rush a lot of hiring in order to find like the best technical person to do this. And I think with where we sit today and what we learned along the way is in some ways, I don't really care if you can do the job as well as somebody else. I care that you can learn. I care that you want to learn, and that's really important. And I think really important in the agency, but also the AI consultancy, for obvious reasons. But I think it's important in any company. Like if you don't have people that want to get better and want to learn, you have half an employee, in my opinion. You have somebody that can do that job, but that's all that they'll ever do. Um, and the second thing is that we do a screening interview now where it's just tell us about your experience, and if it looks like they've been doing something similar to what it is we need them to do, then great. I mean, we read the resume. Um, Most of the interviews that we have are values based and about culture. And then we actually even we call it the gauntlet, but we'll do a number of panel interviews with people across the agency. Um, so that the people that are going to work with this person can be represented in that room and ask the questions that they want to ask. Really try to suss out in that interview what their values are, what are their passions, what drives them. Um, and and we started that process, and we used to they go through that process, and the gauntlet would say no, that they're just not a good fit. But we're like, yeah, but they're so amazing at doing this other stuff, and we would hire them. And then, like within 6 months, like it was just a train wreck, right? Because it was a big cultural train wreck, and I know Max, but it's this is if you hire people that are counter to your values and you have a good culture, those people stick out real fast. And that's not great for us, but it's arguably even worse for the person that we hired. Like it's not that they're a bad person. They just, they don't believe in the same things, or the things that are important to us aren't as important to them. And they need to go find an environment where they can be successful and be in an environment where the things that they value and they're passionate about are valued inside that organization, and they can work with people that are more like-minded. So now if the gauntlet says no, no matter how alluring the candidate looks and how much we need them, we just say no, because it's just never worked out to go against that group. And another important part of that gauntlet process is it gives the candidate the opportunity to meet a lot of people inside the company, and allows them to ask questions of the people who are inside and make up our organization to find out if it's great for them. One of the best things that can happen in that process is the candidate goes, "Yeah, I just don't think that this is the place for me." Of course, we wanted to hire him. We're interviewing him, but I'd rather we make that decision now than wait until 6 months later and they're not happy and we have to deal with the issues of them not being happy and they're going to ultimately leave anyway. So I'd like to think that we have a really good process right now. I think for an agency, we have incredibly low turnover from people in our organization, and I'm sure we'll learn even more things along the way. But right now, I think we're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, it's interesting that gauntlet process. I always think what separates candidates is the types of questions that they ask, especially when you put them with their peers and people that are going to be
Yeah,
like it's like what separates all things even, the candidate that truly asks curious questions where like they don't mind being the stupidest person in the room because literally
yep,
like you need to know that in order to
yeah,
understand something else. I always like that's the thing is like if candidates are out there, if they it's one thing that separates, candidates from one another is like how good their questions truly are. And to your point, you can quickly figure out if somebody's a relentless learner based on the questions they're asked, or
Yeah, for
a
sure.
know-it-all that somebody's asking a leading question just for you to know that they are asking smart questions. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. I can tell you if someone goes through that gauntlet, they don't ask a question in an interview, they won't make it through. Because the people that are interviewing that person, they want somebody that's gonna be curious, and they want somebody that wants to be learning, and if they don't see it in the interview, they're like, "Oh, they're probably not a fit here because you gotta learn stuff all the time in this job."
Yeah, I think the other thing, when you think about the agency and the digital marketing, like it typically is a younger crowd. I mean, not always, but like you've always worked probably more so than most industries where you had more generations of people, kind of working together. And well, I remember the good old days. Your office is amazing. I think every agency has to have like a nicely designed office so you can trust that they know exactly, kind of what good stuff will look
Yeah.
like. So that's been amazing. But how would you define, I admire your culture. I admire what you guys have built. How would you define your culture like, when you started versus the culture today? Because I always think about culture as like you want to, you know who you are today, but I think the best people they understand who they are today. They don't want to lose that, but they know that they can, kind of up level the culture and they kind of know what that means and hire the people that help them do that. But is there like, first of all, how would you define culture? Like, what are the most important elements of culture?
Um, I define culture as the unspoken ethos that is a contract between everybody that works in that company, right? It's these yeah, I mean, you can start a culture by having values saying these things are important to us, but a culture is much deeper than that, in my opinion. It's something that, drives incredible trust between the people that work inside that culture because they know what to expect from each other. There's a lot of personal accountability, to the people that they work with. Um, and, um, and it's something that when people come and work in a culture that fits for them, I think makes their work energizing and not draining. It's something they love the people they work with. And they love them. They would say, "Well, I love them because they're good people or because they're smart," but they love the people they work with because they make it so comfortable and easy to work inside of that environment, and they can have fun with those people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What about yeah, I feel like we touched on this just you and I personally, but after COVID, obviously remote, had to be a piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
how have you guys handled it? What have you learned? Like, I think it's interesting. Everybody handles it different. I respect everybody, for how they want to do it. But how have you dealt with it and kind of how have you flexed since, COVID?
Yeah, I mean, COVID, I think we went home a week before most companies did because we just saw it coming. We wanted to make sure everybody was safe, and I think we told everyone, "Hey, we're just gonna try this for 2 weeks, and then we're gonna reassess it," right? Obviously, that was not what happened, but nobody knew what was happening at the time. So we went full remote. I mean, we were pretty fortunate in that, we use all SaaS-based systems. We had Zoom that we were using with clients, not to the extent that we ended up using it. So it wasn't, and everyone has a laptop, so it wasn't particularly disruptive a work standpoint in terms of getting work done. Um, but full remote was hard because it started to get disruptive in culture. Um, we over time started to see that people started to have a lot less empathy for each other because we were just faces on a screen. Meetings would start, everyone would pop in, like, "What's this meeting about?" And we would go and they'd go through the agenda and they do that meeting, and then it was over, like, "All right, see ya." And like none of those personal interactions were happening where we could connect with each other as humans. And culture suffered along the way. And um, and so as soon as we had the ability and we felt like it was safe for people to come back, we started staging into it. So hey, we're just gonna do 1 day back, but we just need to connect with each other and let's try and start to have some more empathy for people. Let's start doing collaboration and in-person meetings. And let's have these, water cooler conversations about, our shoes and what we did over the weekend and what concert we're going to next week. Um, And then we eventually got to 3 days a week in the office, and 2 days are optional work from home. And when it's optional, it just means everyone works from home. And we've played around with it. We started with Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office, and then I think probably 2 years ago we went to Monday, Friday at home, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, and that's where we sit today. We don't, there's certainly a lot of pressure from employees because they like the benefits of working at home. Um, as leaders of the company, we also see some of the detriments of only working from home, and so we try to strike a good balance. And then so we do give people a certain number of days of an allotment in a year where they can, no questions asked, just I'm going to work from home today as long as they give us a heads up. It works out to about half their time they're in the office, about half the time they're not. But it's structured. It's not. It's everyone comes in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so we're all here. We get the benefit of being in the same building together and collaborating. We're recording this on a Thursday, but tomorrow there'll be nobody here and everyone's just going to be on Zoom meetings together.
What's funny is we are spread out throughout the country, so we don't get together as often. But we even ask our team, which obviously is remote, what the two things they want most, and they want connection and flexibility, which are like directly competing against one another when you think about it. So at least they're honest, I think, is what my thing was. So we started to figure out like how we build connection the best we can without being in the same physical space. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I'm
Yeah.
actually excited to get into some of the AI stuff. This has been amazing, by the way, so far. Thank you. So you've led Tomorrow Today, to the forefront of like kind of the AI consulting. What inspired you to focus on AI, and how has it transformed your approach to business?
Yeah, so I rewind back to end of November 22, is when ChatGPT 3.5 came out. It was the first time that this tool of generative AI was really available to the public. And I remember I was actually I'm the board of a group of agencies around the world, and we were in New York having our kind of annual in-person strategic planning meeting. And I was sitting next to another agency principal who's from a large international agency. And it came out, and we just started playing around with it in the middle of this board meeting, and we both looked at each other and just said, "Holy shit, this is going to be able to do a lot of the things that agencies do today, and clients are going to be able to do some, or some would argue all the things that an agency does at some point using this technology." It really freaked me out. Like I spent all of December just kind of trying to figure out what we were going to do. My technology brain just said, in 12 months, we're going to have 40% unemployment in this country because corporations are going to insist on driving efficiencies with this. And I really thought that our business was in pretty immediate danger over the next year. And so as I went into the new year, I just made the strategic assessment that, number one, this stuff's not going to go away. I can't make it go away. I can't hide it. And number two, it's just going to get better and better and better over time. And so the only thing that I saw that we could do was become better at it faster than everybody else. So I just shifted gears and kind of my priorities as a CEO inside the company. And I think with the benefit of having pretty deep technology roots and figuring out how to apply emerging technologies to business. And I spent the year giving people tools, training them on how to use those tools, going through the change management exercise of trying to get people to rethink how they do work. And then we started, actually in the summer, we started building tools with our developers of that leverage integrations with AI with our existing systems and data that could drive massive speed and efficiency and create better work and create better outcomes. And so as we went through that year of building these things, or that half year, what I started to realize is all the opportunities that we were finding had nothing to do with marketing, right? Marketing, like it's using ChatGPT or using Midjourney or Adobe Suite to create things and video and those things. They're great tools, and the agency certainly uses them. Um, but the real advantages to the business had to do with finance and HR and legal and operations and project management. And I started to look at that and said, these are the same problems that every company in the world's going to need to solve in the coming years. And So I started doing some speaking to executive groups. My dad runs, they have like 8 different peer groups of executives. I made a presentation for all, and gave it to all 8 of those groups, just briefing executives on what this stuff is, because most don't know really what it is, because no one's explained it to them in a way that's practical for a business person. And then spent 60 minutes actually demonstrating advanced uses of things like ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, so they could see it working live. And what my that experience taught me was that, I have yet to run into an executive team that knows what to do with AI or has a strategic plan for what they're going to be doing with it, um, or what AI really means to the future of their business. So I made the decision, to launch this new company, Tomorrow Today, at the beginning of this year, so 10 months ago, aimed at it has nothing to do with advertising, nothing to do with marketing. It's working with companies that, and helping them understand what the opportunities are, and then building these tools for them that create just massive speed and efficiency inside their business.
Got it. And what do you and by the way, Chris, I went through that demonstration with you and some of my foundational learning. Now we're building pieces of software there.
Oh, good.
It's like
Yeah.
you helped me wrap my head around what the capabilities were in one of those meetings. So I do give you a lot of credit for that. Um, what do you think the biggest barrier for companies trying to integrate AI, or like, what do you think it is?
I think there's 2 dimensions to challenges. If you talk about integrating AI, it's quality of data, right? It's if you think really about the kind of the technical what you're doing with it, like if you have shit data, um, it doesn't really matter what if you have AI or not. It's your outcomes are not going to be good. So a lot of the focus, if you look at Accenture's has billions of dollars in revenue over the last year of working with enterprises, and they call it AI, but really what they're doing is they're in there cleaning up and consolidating and getting their data house in order, so then they can actually do cool stuff with it. But I think the single biggest challenge that companies have and will continue to have is, and it's the reason we don't have 40% unemployment right now, is that in order for you to get the advantages of using this tech at an individual level, people have to change the way they think about their work, and they have to change how they do their work. And fundamentally, people don't like to change, right? So if you think about it like, hey, we're rolling out this whole new core software, ERP, there's a whole training exercise and change management exercise that you have to go through that get people to be changing the way they do work. And I think AI is even harder than that, in that, when you open up Chat GPT, you literally have a blank screen. And it's like, what do I do with this? And so teaching people about what's possible, but then reinforcing that and getting them to change their behavior where they start to look at a task and actually it occurs to them that maybe they should be using AI to do this rather than do it the way they've always done it, will continue to be the biggest barrier, to adoption on this stuff. And it's the whole reason, in my opinion, um, that we haven't seen massive transformation. There's a lot of people talk about, well, it's AI is hype. It's not really driving the results people want. It's not driving the results people want because people either don't know how to use it, or they're not being held accountable to use it, um, or they're not really being driven to change how they do work. And that'll continue because as I've learned over the years, changing people is really hard.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's one side of the equation where AI brings you a lot of different ways to solve a problem where people
Yeah.
almost are like they're too confused, but like if they just took it step by step and helped be more efficient at like the steps that they were taking in the work. It's almost like I think what's true now, and this would be good to kind of run by you, is like the first step is to realize that AI does work, and either you learn how to use AI or somebody that learns how to use it may put you out of a job. So like
Yeah.
that'll be the first thing. But that's my question is like, now that you're going in and helping companies, see it and understand the efficiencies, and you pointed out some pretty critical areas: operations, finance, and legal. But like, what's the best approach to educating companies on the benefits, and then especially those hesitant, like, I know they're not hesitant, the people that bring you in, but the employee base, I bet
Yeah.
sometimes. But like, what have you found the best approach so far in educating them?
I mean, all of the clients that we have in Tomorrow Today are hiring us not because they're trying to reduce headcount. They're hiring it because they want to scale and they want the people who are inside that company, they want to use the best of those people. They want to figure out ways that they can stop doing data entry and stop writing massive documents that aren't particularly good strategic uses of the time and free them up to talk to clients and free them up to be more strategic and free them up to collaborate and innovate. Use what humans are great at and let robots do what robots are great at. So we haven't had a client that hired us to figure out how to cut headcount in the next year, right? It has a lot to do with how can we service our customers better? How can we be faster? How can we take something that takes 3 days to do for a customer and we can do it in 2 hours? What's the benefit that customer has and how much more valuable are we to them? Um, in particular in HR and in hiring, I mean, as you're starting to build the software you're building, a lot of it's about like, how could we make this process so much faster? Because when someone hires you, they need somebody in that seat yesterday. That's why they hired you. So if you can do something that would normally take 2 months and you can do it in 3 weeks, you have a much more valuable product offering. And that same thing happens internally inside every organization in the world and how they do hiring. Um, a lot of the messaging that we guide the leadership teams that we work with is being really clear what your goals are. Your goals are to become faster and better and more competitive and drive up customer satisfaction and provide more value, but also to take things off the team's plate that aren't particularly enjoyable to do, right? That aren't like nobody. I mean, there are people that like doing this, but maybe they're not the right people to have in your company. But it's nobody likes looking at one form that's a PDF and then taking a an ERP screen and copying things and typing it into that, right? That's not a good use of a human's time to do that. And most people don't like doing that. That's some of the worst part of their job. And they're doing it all the time. Well, what if we could just take that away and then you can focus on the things you actually like about doing your job? And so a lot of the approach when we come in and we're doing that consulting is like, that's what we're here to do. We're like, what are the things we'll ask questions like, what's the most tedious, boring part of your job? What do you spend so much time doing that you think is just a waste of time? And let's talk about what that is. And in probably 80% of those cases, AI can do a lot of that work for them. And then we say, what are the things you love about your job? Right. And a lot of the things that they love about their job are things that AI can't do. So it ends up being a great match, but you have to go through that process. And it takes a lot of trust in your leadership team in order um, for that message to be delivered and believed.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're talking my love language now. For example, I mean, this is an easy one, but for me, uh, I was a shitty writer. I always have been. Like
Yeah.
I told you when I didn't know how to write. I could do math. Turns out it's communicating by email and written format's pretty important. And in fact, I always admired people that were good writers because I wasn't. But like now, I know what I want to say, and as long as I can get it out, then
Yeah.
AI helps me kind of format it faster than I produced the last copy. So like I have very humbly become a pretty good writer because the problem wasn't getting the information. The problem was structuring it, in the right flow. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was one thing, that kind of came to me, when people talk about AI. What what emerging trend in AI are you most excited about? Like, and how do you see them shaping the future of business? I mean, you talked about like tedious stuff. I'm picking up that, but is there anything else like
Yeah.
that comes to mind when you think about like the emerging trend that you see overall? Because you got a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is moving so quickly. Which is what I love about it. Like, there's always like something every week. There's like three new things that come out that are really impactful, and then we get to look at it and play around with it and go, "Oh, this is going to be great for this industry, or this is going to be great for this role inside of a company." And it's hard to keep up with. It takes a lot of time to keep your finger on that pulse. Um, One of the things that we tell people, and I say all the time, and I'm not the only one that says it. I've heard this a number of people who are speaking have said it, is that the AI you're using today is the worst AI that you will ever use. It gets better and better every day. The existing platforms you're using get better. New tools and technologies come out and they're better. Um, and um, and so you need to continually be evaluating and seeing where they're going to get an understanding of something that maybe it's not great at today, but have confidence it will be good at. In terms of overall trends, kind of the next phase of AI that we're going to start seeing are what are called agents, and agents are defined by Microsoft differently than OpenAI thinks about it, different than Anthropic looks at it. But an agent will be something very specific that will do that task for you. So an agent could be as simple as an agent that says, "Hey, I want to book a trip from Phoenix to Japan," or everyone knows I'm in Phoenix, so to Japan, probably on February 12th to the 23rd. Keep an eye on flights for me, and when there's a flight that's business class that's under $3,000, go ahead and book it for me. And that agent will just go off and do that. Like that will happen within the next year to 2 years. Agents are also directly from a chat interface like ChatGPT, will be able to start doing tasks on your computer for you. So use software that you have, like Slack, right? Or your ERP or whatever that is, but actually move your mouse around and type for you. Um, Anthropic's Claude launched that, I think, like 2 weeks ago. It's not very good, but you can start to immediately see, like, just like that, like, this is the worst version of this, and it's going to start becoming good at this, where I can just talk to my computer and it will do things for me. That is coming in the next year or two, that become really interesting. Um, and then the rest is, has to do with things like video, audio. Like if you haven't checked out a lot of the emerging platforms around video and the quality of video they create, and it's why a year ago we had a writer's strike in Hollywood and then an actor's strike. It's a lot of concern over the ability to actually make video and entertainment content, without the use of people, which will ultimately have an effect on jobs in that industry, sadly. But um, it is incredibly amazing how you can just type something and have it create a 15-second video that looks like it came out of Hollywood.
What platform do you use that to for videos? I mean, sure, there's a lot of them, but
Yeah, a lot using there's a platform called Runway. They were kind of one of the early movers in that space. Adobe has tools that do that today that can start creating motions. A lot of kind of smaller ones that you can play around with. You can give it an image and say, "I want you to animate this," and it kind of interprets what's in that image, and it has things moving around like they should be moving around. Um, yeah, it's really, really interesting. And then you can match that up with tools like 11 Labs, where you can create voices straight from transcripts, sometimes for bad. Actually, that's where deepfakes come from. But if you want to use that for good, and you can kind of merge your vision for what it is that you want creatively with with a script that you can write in a chat GPT with an 11 Labs that creates the exact voice that you want for a narrative, with the ability then to create video that looks amazing. You can see where this is headed in terms of compressing time, in terms of creating content.
yeah, yeah. Amazing. I mean, I think one of the things is we're building a couple pieces of software is, when you use multiple platforms, like if you're using Chat GPT or OpenAI and Claude, every time they update, to your point, it gets better. And if you got
Yeah,
multiple in there, you never run the risk of like falling behind because one's always updating at a different time and you're getting the best attributes from each one. And
it's
I mean,
crazy.
it's super wild. What
Well, I was on a client call early this morning, and we were talking about what they wanted to do. And one of the things they wanted to do was go out and do research and find competitors to one of their clients, so that then they could pull that information in and then use that inside of ChatGPT. And I said, well, you're going to have to use a tool called Perplexity to do that, which is awesome. It goes out and does a Google search and consumes all that information, and then uses a large language model like ChatGPT to consolidate that and give you what you want. I said, and then you can take that and then put that into ChatGPT, and that's how that works. And then literally like an hour after we ended the call, ChatGPT added search to their product. So as of today, in ChatGPT, you can effectively do what's not really a Google search, it's their own search. And it'll go out to the internet and find all that content and then bring it in and do what you want with it. And that was just today.
That is crazy. What about what are your views on like what are some negative implications that, and I get it. I don't want to go too overboard, but like enough that I think people would find this viewpoint valuable of like where do you see this going off the rocker if it's not, tempered and the right people aren't stewarding it right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the opportunity in the short term for people to become dumber, because they stop actually going through the critical thinking they need to be doing, right? And the learning that comes along and comprehension that comes along from that. It's one of the things I worry about in the education system is, you know, it's intimidating to sit in front of a blank page and start writing something, but the act of writing itself drives comprehension. And now if you're offloading that to an AI to go do that for you, and then you're just editing it, like what did you actually learn in that process? So I'm pretty concerned about that. I think if you were to paint a longer picture, and I think that's probably from the podcast I listen to, and I believe is probably a 5-year timeline, is a lot of what knowledge workers do today, AI will be able to do. If you kind of look at the trajectory of of AI advancement and how these things are becoming better at what looks like an exponential pace. Um, it's going to become better and better and better at what people do, which is going to fundamentally redefine what work means to humans. And I have no idea what's going to happen. Actually, nobody does. Very few people talk about it. But like, what does it mean when you can do the same work that you can get the same amount of work that you get done today, or even more, but you can get that done in 20 hours? The dystopian way to look at that is, well, that means that then just half those people aren't going to have jobs, and we'll just have full-time people that get twice as much work done. But what is that going to mean in terms of kind of what we do, right? Like work defines a lot of people every day, and and gives them purpose to go do that. What does that really mean 5 years from now, where that work isn't nearly as important because we have AI doing it for us? And then you can go into all the economic impact of what does that mean when half the workers we don't need anymore, right? Something has to be done in order. And these are all scary things that I'm sure we'll figure it out, but it's going to be turbulent. What will happen is GDP will go through the roof, right? Because everything is going to be moving faster and more efficient. Um, so that's the good news. The bad news is like, what are the people going to do? Like, do we become like a Star Trek society where you just work if you want to, and if that, you get to do whatever you want. I don't know. I really don't know. Like this is stuff that freaked me out in 2022. And kind of what got me past it is like, I can't, we can pontificate and ponder what it's going to be, but I can't do anything about it. So I just choose to focus on like, what are the things that we can be doing today to help companies navigate this change that's going to be happening as it happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's start finishing up on what I kind of want to touch on. This was amazing. So I like this is, I mean, I just kind of let it go because this is what I think a lot of people are thinking about. You're actually doing it and educating and running a business, so like they know where to find you and kind of what you're doing. So this is great. What about like what have you learned on how to manage? And this is more like honestly, selfishly, I'm still learning a lot how to manage your, kind of personal life and work life and what's become more important to you as you've gotten older? You and I are, I think, about the same age. I think we both
Yeah.
turn 50 soon. But like, there's a lot of things that I've been thinking about that I prioritize different. But like, what are those things to you?
I mean, I think there was a time where I had TerraLever and I was running it, and we had clients in Europe and all around the country, and we were doing amazing things with cool companies, and I was gone a lot. I wasn't home. Like you can't go visit clients in Europe and go for 2 days. Like I'd be gone for 2 weeks at a time. And the kids were growing up. They were probably 6 or 8 around that time, and I just started thinking about how much I wasn't present for them and what I was missing. Um, And then I came to the realization of like, hey, I own this company and I'm in charge of it. I can make this company whatever I want so that it does fit what's important to me. And what's important to me was to be there for my kids and coach baseball and softball and go to all their events and be home at night. And I literally restructured the company and who we went after as clients to focus on things that were going to keep me home, where I didn't have to do that kind of traveling, that weren't in some ways very kind of stressful big brand clients, and change the company. And we weren't any, and arguably, I think we were more profitable, because if you're working with a big sexy brand, they have a lot of leverage on you, and you tend not to make a lot of margin with those clients, in my experience. Um, but that allowed me to kind of restructure my life in a way that worked for me and fit my priorities. And I talk a lot to entrepreneurs about this, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that Max, and I know, that work 80 hours a week, and they have families, right? And they're burning it at both ends, and they're just driven by that work, and they complain, and they lament about how they don't have, they wish they could spend more time with their family. And then, but you just ask them, like, who's actually in charge? Like, isn't this your business? Don't you own this? Don't you decide who does what inside your company? And if it really wasn't that important to you, like, maybe you just don't grow as fast as a company, but you also get fulfilled by the other things in your life that are important to you. Arguably, if they're more important to you, then be the same size company you want for 10 years, right? And put your focus in. And some people make that decision, some people don't. Some people understand that they're just not a great parent, but it's more important to them to go and pursue that growth and success in business. And that's not, with no judgment. That's, if you're willing to make that call, then that's what's important to you. You should go do that. But coming to the realization for me that I was actually could control where I spent my time and how I spent my time, was pretty eye opening for me, and then became a big part of my life for the last probably 15 years.
Yeah. I think about this often, and, I think we all struggle with it a little bit, but I've done definitely like reprioritizing stuff. And I think the one thing I think about, I heard this on, I wish I'd give it credit because it was another podcast, but like the best thing ever would be a slow, steady climb,
Yeah.
like this, because I think what happens, and this happened to me, you have an exit, or something where it spikes up, and it kind of throws you for a loop. You're always going to kind of come back down, and like you get kind of some false, confidence in some ways. And
Yeah.
it's a little confusing. And I think about it, I'm like, God, if I could, when I give entrepreneurs like advice, I was actually at the SaaS Academy this week, and I sat down to these next two 30-year-olds. One of them just got married and just had a baby, and one was about to get married, and his wife is 5 months pregnant. And they were, once I started talking, they just started asking me for advice, and I had a lot of it because I've made so many mistakes with it.
Yeah.
But I like
Same.
that slow, steady climb. When you think about it, would be kind of the best. What I've seen, especially in YPO, people that see a lot of success, it looks fun, but like I think personally they go through a readjustment phase, you know what I mean? When they start thinking about like what that meant and how insignificant they feel once they've sold something or they're not doing something.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different things to it. But yeah, man, I've been
Yeah.
thinking about that.
I got advice, and I went to this thing in YPO. It was about kind of M&A and education on that front. But the first people they brought in to talk to us were people that had had successful exits. And one of the pieces of advice that I thought was really good was, do not discredit the amount of luck that got you to where you're at today. Like, just because you went out there and did it and sold your company for $100 million does not mean that you can go do it again, because so many things came together to go make that happen. So don't take everything you got from your exit and put it to your next venture so you can 10x that again, because there's a huge amount of risk in doing that, that luck will not align for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, that is so much truth in that. What about what have I not asked that I should ask? Like based on kind of just like there's so much I could go another hour easy with you, but I want to be
Yeah.
respectful of time.
You didn't ask me why I still suck at golf, despite playing seriously for 10 years. That one I still haven't figured out.
Yeah, I got a little better this summer, but I think you just got to be okay with sucking and then just knowing that you're just
Yeah.
slowly getting a little better.
I love playing with Kim because she's not good at golf and she knows it. And so she hits a bad shot and she's like, she just laughs about it. Meanwhile, I play in a group of guys, or, a guy who's an 18 handicap who snaps his club over his thing. Like, what did you think was going to happen? You're an 18 handicap. Like, everyone knew that was going to happen. Like, why are you angry about it?
Yeah. Actually, I would say one of the best things that's happened to me over the last 2 years is Brian has started playing golf. And if you asked if I wanted my wife to play golf several years ago, you and I have talked a little bit about this. It's been a
Yeah.
great thing. And she's taught me a lot of the same way. She's super patient.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't get that upset. But I will say, she used to get mad at me if I hit a bad shot. And when we're just playing casual, I drop another ball and just play it from there and drop it,
Yeah.
hit it. She'd always get mad at me, like, why do you have to hit another ball? And now I see her doing that, once they start getting
Yeah.
like,
Because you want to prove that you can get that shot right.
yeah. Oh, you got it in here. You just want to
Yeah.
hit it. But well, awesome, dude. Well, I'm gonna thanks a lot for everything. This has been absolutely amazing. I can't wait to get this aired in the short future here. Um anything else that you want anything else that parting advice as we, get off the air here?
Oh my gosh. Anytime someone asks for advice, I just start rewinding and all the things I fucked up in life. Is I don't know. I think a lot about AI. I'm spending about 75% of my time now on AI. It's going to change, and we're not going to stop it. So if you haven't dug into it and you haven't started using it, we use a term. I taught people in the agency, and I tell all of our clients it's FAFO, which is fuck around and find out. Like you can't learn this stuff unless you start using it, and so take the time to do it. The advice I give to all the employees in the agency, and I told them this in March of 23. And I said, AI is not coming for your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI is going to come for your job. And so when I'm talking to students, like we had a bunch of students from Arizona State here yesterday, and they were looking for advice. And I'm just like, I said, like, if you're going to go into the workforce and not know how to use AI, I was like, there's going to be somebody else that does, and you're not going to get a job. So despite what your professors are telling you, despite what an employer might tell you if you work there, you need to be playing around with it and become good at it, because that's the future of how work's going to get done. For executives down to interns, everyone needs to be playing around with this and learning from it, becoming good at it. And the only way to become good at it is to actually use it.
Amen, brother. Well, you've been listening to the Built on Purpose podcast or watching the Built on Purpose podcast brought to you by Y Scouts. You can listen to all of our past and future podcasts at yscouts.com. Chris, thanks a lot for everything. This has been absolutely amazing.
I've loved it. Thanks a lot, Max. Thanks for having me on.